Donald Trump, let me just be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all critics. You know why we know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House.
Totally agree.
The popular vote. He has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream built around him and for him, and a religious fervor in a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime. And we woke up in a body bag on election day and didn't even know it. Why? Because we thought that because CNN, NPR, New York Times, all of the mainstream media was pretty much beating hell out of Trump, that Trump was getting the hell beat out of him. The mainstream media is actually now, by the numbers, the fringe. And the fringe,
I know it,
by the numbers, is now the mainstream.
I know it.
Tell me that we're the mainstream when, if I'm sitting next to Anderson Cooper, I'm talking to 1 million people, maybe 1.2 million. Down the road, if on Fox, we're talking to 3 million, maybe 3.2. And there's some Twitch streamer you've never heard of, talking to 14 million people.
Totally agree.
So
totally agree.
Hold on a second now. The fringe is now the mainstream, and the mainstream is now the fringe. We got beat on platforms I've never heard of: Twitch, Kick, Rumble, Roblox. All these platforms sound like symptoms of somebody in the hospital. Okay, Twitch, Kick, Rumble. What is it? And don't let me just say this now, because the problem you're going to have now is when Joe Rogan sits down with Donald Trump, 48 million people watch the YouTube of the podcast. The YouTube. We didn't have that many people watch the debate on CNN. So, guys, get out of my face. We had the wrong analysis. We didn't even have the conceptual framework to understand what's happening to us.
That's right. You were playing a different game. I mean, basically.
And if you can't start with that, if you don't know who Kai Cent is, then you don't get a chance to run politics in America.
And how the hell? I know I keep asking you. It's like a similar riff on the same question, but I do want to talk a little bit about Trump, though. I totally agree with you about the Democratic stuff. How the hell did Donald Trump figure out the mainstream media is the fringe and the fringe is now the mainstream? How the hell did Donald Trump figure out? I mean, Joe Rogan is obvious, right? Like, we knew the guy had a big audience. It's not like we were like stunned, but like, how the hell was he, the 78-year-old guy who doesn't even have a computer and still like writes handwritten notes? How did he become the guy who cracked the code on, to your point, running a cultural, I don't even want to say campaign, running
it was a movement.
Look, heading a cultural movement versus a campaign.
Every one of your people knows Elon. Listen. So everybody keeps, the problem is you have a framework in your mind that, how can Donald Trump? Guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Donald Trump, let me just be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all critics. You know why we know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House.
Totally agree.
The popular vote. He has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream built around him and for him, and a religious fervor in a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime, and we're still saying, well, how was this guy? We look like idiots to ordinary.
You're totally right. I remember looking. This was like a week before the election, and it was like they had like made up. And by the way, we haven't even talked about the memes and how well they do on the internet and all that sharing. But it was like this picture of RFK Jr., Dana White, Trump, and Tulsi Gabbard, and it was like
Joe Rogan, all former Democrats,
and it was like, this is the Republican Party. And I was like, no shit, like that is that. I mean, like that's a coalition where you're like, okay, that's something. Like it's to your point. It's got a little something for a lot of different people. And we're still looking at it as like moderate versus conservative, Republican versus Democrat. You know what I mean? It's like all that stuff.
Listen, when you're dealing with omni-crisis, everything starts to kind of come apart. All of the old conventional ways of, I hope you can hear me.
I got you.
All of the conventional ways of thinking and seeing whatever have to be challenged. And what you have is everybody says, little Donald Trump, he's like a big dummy. He's a bunch of idiots around him. That's just a lie. It's not true. He's not a big dummy. He doesn't have a bunch of idiots around him. Just because we don't understand it doesn't mean he's dumb. We don't understand it. That means that we're dumb. Like the first.
So true. You're so right. Well said.
The first thing that we have to acknowledge is we got beat by something that we don't understand. And all these liberals wandering around and going, oh, I just don't understand. Well, maybe because you're dumb and he's smart. Try that on. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime.
Subscribe to the Dummy Funnies now!